Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues, and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy.
So, what's on today's show, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, in this week's episode, and in fact for the next 3 weeks, Richard Freeman is taking us on his visit to Rowton's Museum of the Paranormal and Spirituality in Carmarthen, Wales. Enjoy.
I really like the old credits.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of On the Track. My name's John Downs and I am the Hang on. What's that over there? Somehow we've been transported to the Isle of Man.
So, Jeff, what we got occurring in today's episode? Well, Barry, in today's episode, we're going to be investigating Old Gumbolt. Who's Old Gumbolt? Old Gumbolt is an albino mole the size of a Kodiak bear who burrows in the loam beneath the ancient city of Colchester, and on moonlit nights will come to the surface to batten on the flesh of man.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode On the Track. My name's John Downs. I'm the director of the Centre for Fortean Zoology, and every Wednesday evening for about a quarter of an hour and every Saturday afternoon for about twice that, we bring you a mixture, a melon, a muddle, I can't think of anything else to begin with M. Lauren, what begins with M?
Moon, of course.
Thank you, Lauren. I can work with that. Because this show is just like the moon. It is a satellite that goes round and round and round the edges of cryptozoology, causing havoc every 28 days. And if that doesn't make any sense to you, I don't know what does. And in the background there, you could hear Richard Freeman remonstrating with the dog who'd committed an atrocity on the carpet. And so it's left to me to explain to you what the show's all about. Well, it's a collection of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. What's surreality, you may ask? Well, ask him.
Surrealism is when you suckle black milk from the non-Euclidean paps of Shub-Niggurath, black goat of the woods with 1,000 young. By our Shub-Niggurath, may your Sylvian altars run wetly red. Well, I first became aware of Laura Rowton and her husband Erik through a very good YouTube channel called The Paranormal Scholar. And she announced, I've been following it for quite some time, that she'd brought an old chapel in Carmarthen in Wales and converted it into a museum of the paranormal and spirituality. Now, she'd been kind enough to reference some of my books in her various podcasts, and I'd written to her and spoken to her on the phone and through email, and I collected a few occult-related antiques for the museum. So, together with my old friend Richard Pharo, we went down for the weekend to meet up with Laura, drop off these antiques, and she gave us a guided tour of the whole place, which was exceptionally interesting.
So the reason we were interested in this building is because it actually has a supernatural history of its own. So at the end of the 19th century, a new reverend arrived. So he was Swansea born but grew up in the States and began his preaching there. And he came and visited this chapel and must have fallen in love with it because decided to actually relocate to Carmarthen to become the full-time reverend here. And his name was W.S. Jones. And en route to Carmarthen, he actually had what's recorded as a baptism of power. So the Holy Spirit came into him and actually also divinely healed him of a medical condition. And when he actually got here, he continued faith healing on. So massive congregations would come to have faith healing and also to experience what are recorded as supernatural manifestations actually in the building. So by the time he left, which was in 1904, the local news in Carmarthen reported, it was really well known, that the congregation here, when they were ill, they wouldn't go to doctors, they would come here instead. And so by 1909, they actually raised enough money to completely redo the interior. So there's been Baptists on this site since 1786, I think, but the building itself now dates to 1851. But the interior was completely redone 1909, 1910, because they raised so much money from all the people coming here for this faith healing that they put in all this Canadian redwood, the seats for 800 people, and it's grade 2 listed. And one of the reasons it is because the gallery, every single seat, you have a clear view of the altar. And that's because people were coming to see something spectacular here.
So what happened then? What were the manifestations?
It seems to be that it was quite, if you knew, you knew, it was quite exclusive, so it's only really recorded as manifestations. But Welsh revivalism, which is a little bit after the 1904, is hallmarked by two things. One of them is the music, the beautiful church music, and the second one is supernatural phenomena. So there is another chapel elsewhere in Wales where one night they actually thought the building was on fire, because it was all lit up ablaze, but it wasn't. It was actually this supernatural phenomena that was going on, this Holy Spirit.
Oh, the Welsh lights?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm familiar with that, yes.
Yeah, so they say manifestations. It could have been the Holy Spirit, it could have been spirits of loved ones, it could have been angels, and indeed in the time that we've been here, we've had different groups come in, some people doing nighttime investigations, some people psychics, and people have said that they've had visions of angels here. So one lady said she saw, said that she saw big 3 white-winged angels, and another lady said she saw on the altar a great white light beam that actually went all the way up to the organ at the top in a big kind of V shape. So yeah, I can't say for certain what they saw, but it was certainly enough for them to raise all this money to redo the interior.
Oh, that's great.
Very special place. So we like to keep artifacts in here that are more true to that kind of the light side of spirituality and traditional religion. So you welcome to go that way. We have a little exhibit on angels there, and also the sacred symbology of the peacock.
Oh yes.
You'll notice that Archangel
peacock.
Michael looks perhaps a little bit different from what you might think of the white fluffy winged angels, but that's because the peacock is a universal ancient symbol of divinity, immortality, and all good things like that, with the eye watching you. So we have a few different bits of art on the wall to show that, going back to the 6th century with the Virgin and Child being watched over by peacocks. And then of course the more explicit examples where you actually have these angelic figures, the Archangel Michael with peacock wings. But it's this reoccurring idea, and people who report seeing angels often say that they're these fantastical beings that have hundreds and thousands of eyes watching them.
Yeah, and they're supposed to be in rings, aren't
Yes,
they?
yes.
They're not humanoid, they're like these interlocking rings.
Yeah. So that the closest that we have on Earth, I
Yeah.
guess, is the idea of the peacock that has this almost like a Mandela sort of thing.
Right. And many
hailing
wings,
them.
yes. And that could be like,
But some people, when they report seeing these angelic beings, instead of it being exactly a peacock, it's actually more like a human eye. So you can imagine this colossal being, but with eyes that are actually animated and watching you. So we have this as our almost angelic corner.
Cabinet of curiosities.
So we have lots of different crystals in there.
So he's been described with peacock wings since at least 16th
Yeah,
century.
yeah.
Wow.
And here, this is 10th century, yeah, all the way through. And you have William Morris here. It's not described as the Archangel Michael, but he has the solar symbology as well, which is the Archangel Michael also. So right the way through, and even people in the present day, you can find artists, like maybe people who do that art on Etsy, they might say, I have been in contact with the Archangel Michael, and he looked like this. And then they have an image of an angel with peacock wings, when perhaps they didn't even know prior to that he's associated with that imagery. So it's really fascinating.
Yes.
And similar entities appear all around the world as well, with that same kind of solar symbology, peacock symbology. We have a few other depictions of angels here as well. Jacob's ladder, of course. And another one there with the Archangel Michael, again with blue, with the peacock wings. Talking
by
to
Hieronymus
John.
Bosch.
Yeah, talking to John, the Revelator.
Now these are the ones
Yeah, so Ezekiel's
with the rings,
wheel.
and the ones with the animal heads and
So quite
many
bizarre
wings.
depictions of angels,
Yeah.
but again, the idea of so many eyes watching you. And this next little section here is on divination, where we like to point out that people have been trying to reach out and commune with the other side all throughout time and place, with the word divination itself having divine at the start, that you're trying to reach out to the divine, to God, to the Creator. And one of the most ordinary and common objects people have used for divination is the Bible itself.
Yes, opening it up. And
Yeah.
most famously in M.R. James's story, The Ash Tree.
Okay.
They do it in that, when they open it up,
Yeah.
and they get the prophecy about and her young will also suck up blood and cut it down, and it's all in reference to the ash tree with the spiders coming out of it in the story.
Oh. Well, saints all throughout time have done bibliomancy, and it's quite shocking when you think about, especially from a modern sort of perspective, the church is very anti anything occult or divination. But you have so many cases of Puritans when the New World was being moved to. They would turn to the Bible and say, should I pack up my entire life and move to the Americas? And they would do an act of bibliomancy, and if it told them to go, they'd go. So fascinating that this has been used for so long.
I haven't seen, so with the wheels.
Gustav Doors, The Fall.
So as we move on our tour, we then start to say, well, not all angels are necessarily good. So this corner here is about demonic possession and exorcism, and we have a couple of what we like to call star artifacts here that we're really pleased to care for. And there are those two scrolls there in that case.
Oh, goodness me.
So you're welcome to go right up to them. They're talismanic or magic scrolls, and they're from early 20th century Ethiopia. And
I nearly brought some of these.
You did?
So far.
Well, it's interesting that you didn't then. Maybe there was a bit of intervention. So you know what they are then. They would have been made for someone who was demonically possessed, at the same length of the person who was suffering from that diabolical affliction. And each one of these scrolls has 3 parts. So the first part is a specific prescription against a named demon. So in the case of one, it's a demon who's responsible for infant mortality. And then in the case of the other, the demon responsible for miscarriage. The next part is against the evil eye, which of course is this ancient concept of fascination that can bring you misfortune. And then the third part is an act of ritual binding to actually draw the demon out of the person who is possessed and put them within the scrolls.
Interesting,
themselves.
because the length, because it reminds me of a lot of what happened in the Middle East way back, the lengths of time it would take to purify people, to depossess them. Sometimes some of these Sumerian rituals involve 30 people. And there's people standing there all night vigils and things like this, and it just
even making the scroll, even the ink could have been homemade. Everything about this.
Have you had them translated?
So they're actually, these two in particular were part of the Ethiopian Manuscript Imaging Project. So before we had them, they were in the hands of academics who would have transcribed them all, which is why we know that they have those 3 parts. I don't have a full transcription of them. But I do have the book that is part of that imaging project that goes into more detail about them. For example, it has the name of the demon.
So we have a summary of what's in each part, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, it'd be interesting to know the names of the demons. It really would.
Well, I can have a quick look. The
Yeah.
book is just tucked behind. So there you go, there it is. The
Oh,
Ethiopic
that is
manuscript
interesting.
imaging project. So they're both in here. It's like the name of the person as well. So
A lot of manuscripts hidden away in churches.
yeah, so that's. I
Amazing.
won't attempt to pronounce it, but that's the name of the demon, right there.
Wasalia.
Yeah, fascinating. So that's why they're our star objects, because they're so important and really do capture almost like a syncretic way of dealing with diabolical affliction.
But it's amazing, it just continues through the ages, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's the 20th
Yeah.
century.
It's almost like a divergent path, isn't it, for Christianity to take on the more Semitic magic of the ancient times
Yes.
and then grow into modern
Yes.
day.
Yeah, and of course you still got the same kind of angelic imagery where you have the angel with the eyes on the wings and the sword, but then it has more kind of folk magic and how it's actually prepared with the red on it being blood from an animal sacrifice that would have been made to empower them as well.
I think a lot of people are quite surprised when this is actually a Christian artifact to see all the different paths of Christianity, especially go out east, you have like an historian, Christian
The
myth.
further you get out from Rome.
Yeah.
But I mean, I toured around Ireland some years ago, and we're in a little tiny village, Tralee, way out on the west coast, and there's a Black Madonna.
Yeah.
And it's very, looks almost Hindu,
Okay.
you know. But the Black Madonna in that area is very important for some reason.
Yeah.
The edges one, they have a lot of their own folk practices, but also things that who knows where they came from.
Ireland has had its own way of converting to Christianity, it has its
Exactly.
its own church, almost in a way, isn't it?
Yes.
So we have a few other bits and pieces. So we have some different saints, relics, and there's also holy water from Lourdes in there. We have down here, as well, I mentioned, Reverend Jones. There's a picture of him. He's in the bottom right there. So again, linking back to the history of the building, that who knows what they were doing here, healing people. Maybe there was some element of exorcism. We don't know.
Yeah. So the relics here, what are these relics?
So, for example, this one up here is Gemma Galgani. So she was early 20th century Italian saint, and she was had stigmatum. So we like her a lot. And then also this one here is Saint Lenosha. I'm probably pronounced that wrong. So this is, do you want to say?
Some the Roman proconsulate of Africa when it was under the Vandals. So they were Arian Christians and they were persecuting the other types of Christians. And she was one of the martyrs who was horrifically.
Yeah, she was a young woman, so there was a batch of them. We're not sure exactly what happened to her, but within the batch of martyrs, they did all sorts of horrible things. You can imagine they flayed them and burnt them and things like that. So that relic, it has the seal from Perpignan in France.
Goodness
so
me.
The bishop there.
Yes.
And you'll notice as well we have different coloured cards. So we have a bit of a traffic light system here, red, yellow and green.
Yeah.
So the green labels, which you'll see mainly here, they point out objects which are associated with positive paranormal phenomena.
Yeah.
So of course, holy water from Lourdes is supposed to heal you. These are supposed to draw demons from you, but we also have red labels, which that one's not quite fair, I'll be honest. So these point out objects which are reported as paranormally active or from locations of paranormal significance. So this is a little book of common prayer from wartime, World War II era. It has an inscription on the front. And it was just an object that we've had for years. It wasn't bought for any sort of paranormal reasons, but we would notice that at certain times of year, actually this time of year in the lead up to Christmas, that phenomena was seen to occur around it, sounds, footsteps, and also using different investigation kind of like tools and bits of kit. It seems to set that off as well. We've had things relating to a mother and a child, and the inscription in the front it's because it's white, it is actually for a confirmation.
We actually had it in our bedroom once. I'm thinking, it woke us up. Was it Christmas morning or
On
around
Christmas Christmas morning.
Was it
yeah.
exactly Christmas morning? You woke us up with somebody walking right straight up to it.
Yeah.
As though to pick it up and try to pray
Yeah,
with
so
it.
the red's a bit misleading because it's actually quite a nice object, but it does seem
it has
to be...
phenomena
Yes, it does.
associated with
Yeah,
it.
so we keep it in here. Obviously, it's themed to the chapel, and it's quite a nice. It has quite a nice attachment, I think. Okay. Don't forget your teas there.
Yes.
So we have a few bits and pieces. This board, we keep it separate from the others because we believe it's active. We call it the Nightmare Board. We got it as a historical piece because it is kind of like the perfect horror movie version of the board, and the only board that was licensed in the UK is a John Waddington fold board. But we had it in the house for 4 days before we moved it to our outbuilding because it gave us nightmares, including horrific sleep paralysis. Even our cat would wake, he wouldn't wake, he would be stuck, shaking and having horrific nightmares.
Yeah, it's like almost like it's like sleep paralysis, which is something you also experienced.
So we moved it out and it stopped the nightmares. So then I contacted the previous owner and said, did you ever use this board? And they said, no, they just bought it for resale. But since they had it in the house, they had been having bad dreams. So I hadn't told them what we had experienced, but I was like, okay.
Yeah, okay, let's keep that separate.
Yeah.
It's strange, the nightmares, they all had like the same sort of theme, almost like a Caribbean, Jamaican kind of funeral, kind of weird procession going on in somebody's house. That's what I remember from them anyways.
So back here we have a few bits and pieces relating to Aleister Crowley, his death mask, and also a piece from the house that he bought on the shores of Loch Ness in order to perform ritual magic.
Abramelin the Mage.
Yeah. So we have a few bits.
One of the things he was trying to bind was Leviathan, which was the Hebrew sea dragon.
Yeah.
And the sightings of the Loch Ness Monster began shortly after his ritual failed.
Nice. He definitely didn't succeed then. He escaped.
No, he was called away by MacGregor Mathis before he could finish it.
Okay.
Called away to France, and he couldn't finish it properly. And he had a falling out with Mathis over that and moved away from the house. He said that afterwards, after this ritual had failed, his servants all went mad. Like one of them, who was teetotal, became a drunkard and a wife beater. Another one just went berserk and attacked him. And he had to knock him out and lock him in the coal shed and call the police. And he left the place, and it was brought by Jimmy Page, the musician Jimmy Page, and he had a guy looking after it. He said all sorts of things happened there. They had poltergeist outbreaks. A large statue of the devil rose up and floated across the room. And one night there was something banging on the door of his bedroom, and he said breathing and snuffling like a huge animal, and it didn't go away until first light, until dawn. And then in 1969, a group of American tourists found what looked like an altar that was being used in the nearby graveyard just behind Boleskine House. And there was a sheet, an old sort of a sheet with Turkish script on it and red candles and a conch. And it looked like whoever was using it had just left. And they took this sheet to this altar cloth, rather, to the British Museum, and they translated it from ancient Turkish, and it meant dragon.
Absolutely. We're actually speaking with some friends of ours because they're discussing perhaps doing like a paranormal investigation of Boleskine House with the trust that owns it now. Yeah. So that would be a dream come true.
Yeah, I've only seen it from a distance. I've been past on a boat when I was making a documentary about the monster, but I only saw it from a distance.
Yeah, it's like driven up the road nearby, but that's all we didn't stop, unfortunately.
This gong here was a fortuitous find for us. So it's just a Welsh dinner gong, but somebody's actually carved a six-sided star onto it, which is the Seal of Solomon, and is used ritualistically, and having it on a gong that you hit ceremonially, it's quite a bit more than coincidental, I find. So, yeah.
There was a kids' programme in the 1970s by Cosgrove Hall called Charlton and the Wheelies, and it had a Welsh witch in it called Fenella. And she had a book of magic, and they were accused of being anti-Semitic because they messed up, and instead of doing a pentagram on it, they did the Star of David.
Right, yes.
But that is used ritualistically as well, or Solomon.
Yeah, so call it Solomon, aren't you, to do it?
Yes.
Of course, we don't know what that seal actually looked like. Some people say it is the the 5-sided pentagram. Some people say it's the 6-sided one, and some people say it's something completely different.
Yeah, I have a representation of 7-sided as well. So
Yeah.
I think, in fact, in Crowley's book for magic, he's got that one. So yeah,
The 7,
yes.
That mass there, it isn't really anything in particular, but we have a few masks over there that they are from the Congo region where you use magic, like ritualistically. But the person who gave it to us, they were like an antique dealer, and they just gave us that mask.
Yeah.
They just didn't
So
want
they
it
didn't
for
know
something.
anything about it. It's just like, you can just have this
And if
one.
you have it, yes.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that. I mean, they knew what we did. We were going to do like paranormal museums, so it's just a bit peculiar that. It's very well made as well. I don't know.
Yeah, so we have a couple of objects, including that little pot there, that were donated by a friend of ours who's a psychic medium and paranormal investigator, and he's been going into people's homes for the past 20 years to help get rid of paranormal activity that people have been suffering. So that pot was one that he encountered in the course of that was supposed to have been used ritually. And that little white chest of drawers over there as well was also donated by him, which kind of looks like a completely random object, but came from a house that was experiencing paranormal activity for 2 years, particularly centred on an elderly gentleman who supposedly he would be pulled out of bed in the middle of the night, and it was ultimately linked to this chest of drawers, and it was removed from the house by our friend. The activity stopped for that family, but it didn't stop for him, so he kept it in his shed, and supposedly the chest of drawers had a habit of rolling out of the shed by itself. When we collected it from him, he had many heavy power tools, a big bag of them on top of it to weight it down. Supposedly his sister-in-law, she lived next door to him, she would sometimes come home and would see the chest of drawers just there on the floor outside the shed, and it creeped her out completely. So we put it there on the edge to tempt it to roll off, but it hasn't done it yet.
Self-preservation.
On top, the pendulum has
Yeah, we had people standing still in front of it for a while, and they said they've seen it.
Yeah, it does, when you walk around, it does move, but I saw one gentleman did move a bit more than
he
you would
was still
think.
there for a while. So.
Yeah.
We have these clown dolls here. One was donated to us, and the other we got. We located one that was the same as a control. So we like to ask people which one they think is haunted.
Problem is, all clans are evil, so you
Well,
do not really
but we do have that, and we don't know. Maybe they're both haunted.
And also, these dolls, they were made upon the look of French homeless clowns from the 1960s and 50s. So that is kind of creepy concept in itself, really.
Yeah. So the story is that the haunted one would cause electrical anomalies. The previous owner, in the middle of the night when they got up to use the bathroom, because they're musical, they have a wind-up musical in them, heard it at 2 a.m. playing from downstairs. All sorts of things, like a shadowy blob of some sort was seen over it. And then I think he was actually quite attached to the clown by the end of it, but his family made him get rid of it.
Well, it's actually reported similar phenomena. There's another house around here that's called the Hell House. Hill Fennel. And it absorbed electricity. It was causing the bill to go up and doing all that as well.
Yeah, because they had solar panels.
Yes, I've got.
And
I saw the podcast on that.
Yeah.
Danny Robbins' podcast was really good.
Yeah.
So that was from there, did you say?
No, we're just saying that it's
Oh,
similar,
is it similar?
in that it drained the electricity. Like they would have massive electrical bills, and where the clown came from, the family had solar panels, and their battery bank would be constantly drained, even though based on what they were generating, it didn't make sense. Because they kept it in the an old barn where the batteries and everything, where that setup was. Because once the family made the man kick it out the house.
It's away from the meter here and everything. So, but if it starts doing that, we'll just get rid of it. Really.
So it's actually this one here that is the.
Because this one looks more electrified.
Yes, it does. That's what I'm thinking. His hair was on it.
Well, one lady who came recently said maybe his hair is like that because he got spooked by that one.
That one has stranger eyes. The eyes look wetter on that one.
Yeah.
But I like clowns precisely because they are grotesque and weird.
I think you're in the minority
Yes, I
there.
think
Most
you are.
people would disagree.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon. And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, says, don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you'll miss the new episodes.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
If you've been affected by any of the topics in today's episode, you can just bugger off, because we don't give a monkeys. Bloody well get a grip. Sort your own bloody problems out rather than ringing up somewhere.
That was a public information film.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be back again next week with more of Richard and Mr. and Mrs. Rowton at their museum. And I warn you, you better buckle yourself in, because it's going to be a very bumpy ride and you're not going to believe what happens at the end. I'm going to be back on Wednesday. What am I talking about on Wednesday? Well, I can tell you what I'm talking about on Wednesday. I'm just going to have a look at my memo listy thing, because that shows how organised we are these days. I actually have a memo listy thing. And this is going to be... I've now opened up my memo listy thing. It's going to be a peculiar story about 2 mystery cat reports, 100 rabbits infected with a peculiar disease, 2 dead muntjac, and the girl who fell in love with Adolf Hitler and shot herself in the head. And they're all connected in a weird sort of Fortean general mishmash. I want to say a big thank you to Richard and to Laura and Eric Rowton, who've been the featured guests this episode. I'm not going to say my guests, because I've actually done very little to do with this episode. This was all shot by Richard on location. And I want to say a big thank you to my producer Louis and to everybody else, but for whom this show wouldn't happen, particularly Gwyn, Isabel, Graham, and everybody else involved. And I'd like to say that if you're there watching it, because we're going to be back here doing exactly the same thing next Saturday, so I'm going to be there doing all the gubbins I normally do on a Saturday afternoon, and if you're there watching it and I'm there doing my gubbins, I'll be seeing you.